Welcome back to Azure Centric Podcast on our Azure weekly updates. My name is Marcus Nogueira, and with me, I always have my good friend Andrew Lowes. How are you, Andrew?
I am fantastic, sir. Thank you so much for having me back again this week. Appreciate it. I'm a little bit scratchy. I sound a little bit like I might be a teenager, but it's just a bit of a cold. It's on the way out,
That's
so
okay.
I feel
That's
much better now.
okay. That's the beautiful thing about technology is there is a firewall, right? It's what we call the zero
Oh, that's
trust.
good.
And
Okay,
there
okay.
is a firewall
I should
between
have
you
I
and
should
me.
have implemented my zero trust perimeter much better in this case.
That
I blame my love of classic rock.
we are such a geek fellas that even for health problems we come with geek terminology.
Zero trust
Zero trust
methodology
for
comparison about why is Andrew really sick though. Let's think about that.
I have a feeling this is going to be a good a good episode. Uh,
I
yeah,
think so too. I
yeah,
think so
I'm
too.
assuming,
Yeah.
yeah. But so before we start, and to change a little bit the things is, I want to start thank you the community, and I want to start thank you that you are listening to this podcast. Without you guys, it's not possible to have this.
We're just talking and pretending that
Exactly.
we're not going to drink beer later. So
Exactly. So don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to give this thumbs up, right? Thumbs down, whatever is thumbs that you want to give. We want just to just yeah, kind of. Uh, we would just want to appreciate your effort in supporting the community and supporting Azure Centric. That's the goal.
absolutely.
That was the goal, and that is what we want to do it. But changing a little bit of gears and talking about Azure, this week is been a kind of a normal week, we may say, on Azure, right? A lot of good
Yeah, we
things,
actually had lots of
a lot of
updates again. Yeah.
updates. We didn't have so many updates like last week, although we have to say that this was kind of it felt like more like a networking kind of week.
Yeah, there's been some interesting kind of changes. I think most of us on the Azure world got notifications for our tenants over the last kind of number of days, let's say, about different changes that might be happening. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. And we definitely have some good updates around kind of modernization, I guess might be the way to think about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. uh, and and that's the part that we starting with this week. It's more like we can call the adjusting to the future. I think that is going to be a good theme for this week, right?
I
Okay,
love it.
so without further ado, let's roll, and we will come back. So welcome back, and let's jump to the first one. And the first one is the 5 Azure Classic Network Service that will be retired at the end of August next in 2 years. Not next year, in 2 years.
Correct. Yeah, 2024,
Yes.
I believe. Yeah.
So in August 2021, they announced the Azure Cloud Service that will be retired in August 2024, right at the end of August. Uh, and with that, they're now announcing that 5 of those will be retired. So the classic application gateway, the classic virtual networks, the classic reserved IP address, the classic express route gateway, and the classic VPN gateway. So all of these service that they are under classic, they will be retired in August 2024. So there are a few, because this is related to network. It's always complicated, the change. So
A
they
little
just
bit.
want to reinforce 1 year, kind of 1 year after the announcement, that they basically they are doing this because especially with express routes that there is a physical circuit between your data center and Azure using the what I usually call the Azure version 1, that is the classic one,
Yep.
the ASM, right? um, and to the ARM, that is the version 2, that is where we are today, right? um,
Exactly.
and that is quite important because all of those services, they have a huge impact on your organization, because depending on how you're going to do it, right, you might impact or not the users, and it's networking, and a lot of people, they get nervous about that. So you still have 3 years and a few months ahead, but it's always better to start preparing than leave at the end, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We should probably start now or already be started, ideally, starting to do the testing, understanding what you have, identifying what's left in your environment for kind of classic Azure version 1. And I love how you say that because Resource Manager is really the current version, version 2. In the future, there will probably be a version 3, I have to imagine, because everything
Evolves.
underlying is evolving. Exactly. And that's part of kind of what we buy into with any computing platform, whether it's in our own data center, kind of let's say at the office, or whether it's in Azure or AWS or something else. It's always going to be changing and advancing, and we need to do that because technology changes and it gets better, wonderful things, right? So there's a few kind of catches with some of the big ticket items, right? So we've got kind of app gateways, we've got express route circuits, like you were saying. Some of these migrate very, let's say, gracefully. So express route, I actually have had the experience of moving one
Yep.
from kind of old to new, and it was actually fairly simple. I want to say, in the grand scheme of life, you have to really schedule an outage. You have to kind of talk to your provider, like, okay, you need to make sure you've got all the right people on that call when you execute a big change like this. Because if communication fails, we have to figure out where it fails fairly quickly and get it back working
Absolutely.
again as quick as we can during our outage window,
Absolutely.
of course, right? So um, that said, ExpressRoute does migrate fairly nicely, and we can do it. It does not require downtime. That doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. My experience was about a 1 minute kind of, let's call it a blip on the radar, and things started working, kind of took a bit of a pause, and then it came right back with the new version, and it was just started running again, and then you can kind of continue down the upgrade path. But App Gateway, for example, is a little bit different.
Absolutely.
It's a different methodology. So there's some really great docs about how to migrate from uh, the classic to ARM for deployment. And there's a defined path for all of those 5 items they're talking about in this retirement article. If you're impacted, if your Azure environment was deployed using these items quite a while ago, look into it, take it seriously. It's time to start investigating because the upgrade might not be as bad as it sounds, and you might be able to plan it, get it out of the way, and move on to other more important projects as
Absolutely.
well.
But you still need to have the time to just plan it, especially plan it, verified,
Exactly.
and doing all of that. And you can even use the resource manager in a lot of cases to do that, the move resource manager, to even
Exactly.
consolidate or regrouping in a different type of resource group, depending on the type of resource that you are moving. You can even increase or enhance what you have already and kind of correct
Yep.
the old one, which is pretty
Yep.
cool. I have to say, to just
Exactly.
going on that exercise. And yeah, so this was a pretty good announcement that they did it, just to make sure that we are we are on the same page, and you guys are already ready for all of this, right? And this is pretty cool. I have to say that they are already making again a reinforcement of the announcement, because we know we've been there a lot of times, especially VNET. It's kind of
The
the
VNet's a scary
VNET's
one, right?
scary
Because
because
yeah,
theoretically you can move them, but depending on the classic kind of subscription that you have, and because it was way more restricted at that time, the type of subscription that you have, not as we have right now, that we are kind of a free way to move resources between subscriptions. On the
exactly.
classic
Yeah,
one, if you have a type of subscription, you have a type of resources that you can do it, and it was really a pain, to not saying anything,
it
to
was.
just
Yeah,
move the
you
resources.
had to keep things kind of in the right
Exactly.
track. And ARM is a little bit more
Yes.
flexible. Thus, it's a version 2. It's
Of course.
improved. But the one thing about the VNets that actually does kind of intimidate me a bit with the upgrades is that when you upgrade a VNet, it doesn't upgrade resources tied to the
No.
VNet. So if you have another, like say, app gateway, we'll just pick on poor app gateways, but you have to go also and upgrade the app gateway after the VNet. So you have to determine the correct order of
Yes.
operations. Then you have to do the upgrades, validate and test, and then continue on the path. So that's why we say, of course, plan ahead, because in this case, it could be kind of a cascade effect. Once you upgrade the VNet, you then have to upgrade your other kind of version 1 classic resources so that they can talk to
Absolutely.
the new virtual
Absolutely.
network, right? So there's a lot of work that you may have to kind of let's say take on, right?
Absolutely, and that's the part that we bringing this to the podcast, right, to the show. It's because they make it sound simple, but we've been there a lot of those times, and yes, we can testify that some of those type of things, they are kind of simple, but if you doing your plan accordingly, if you are ready to do that, and if you know what is the right order to do so. So that is the part
Exactly.
that is I want to important to bring it up, right? But another cool update, and moving to the next one, is the general availability of Azure HBv3 virtual machines for HPC, now upgraded. So this is pretty cool. This is the type of updates that we love, because we are such a geek fellas, right? That we want to have more power, more CPU, more memory with less cost. Usually, it's this is our Christmas gift that we always want to hear, right?
Yeah. Yeah, these ones are right because the HBv3 series, these are the big
Yeah,
ones. Like so you typically use these in large
yeah,
scale deployments, and if you're they are compatible with quite a lot, right? So you're going to use these a lot with scale sets and things like that. Good with Linux, but also with Windows VMs. So pretty good
yeah.
flexibility in there. And I think as I take a quick peek at kind of the drill down article here, it looks to me at first glance like it's up to 30 cores that you can include
No,
in
this is up.
is
This
this none?
128 cores. So first and foremost,
Oh, you're
this
right.
is for HPC. HPC means high process computing, high
High
performance
performance.
computing,
Yeah,
and not high processing, high performance computing. So means that you have all of those big clusters that you really want the processing power. So all of these VMs, they are built in a different way, in a different topology. So you have the NUMA, that is the non-uniform memory access. I think is that right?
correct. Yep.
That is, it's an architecture where you can
Reaching back to my hardware days
exactly.
here, but yes.
It is an architecture that allows you to just take more of the cycles of your processes and memory and all of that. So to go a little bit more in depth, you have 4 NUMA, okay, 2 per socket, each 32 core in size. So means that you have 4 channels to physical DRAM to a processor, okay, that you have per socket. So in this case, per NUMA, in this case, so you have 2 per socket. So we're talking about a kind of a 64, 2 times 64 cores, so 128 physical cores that we are talking about.
Right.
And it's not hyper-threading, because hyper-threading, it's different. This is simultaneous multi-threading. So it's totally different, okay? The way that this accesses. But yes.
So if you disable the SMT on these, you do have 120 cores at the peak available, because the hardware still requires a few cycles in this case. And this is on those new AMD server chips, the EPYC 7V13.
I believe
right?
so. I don't have in front of me the EPYC 3rd generation. Yes.
Yeah.
That they have the code name of Milan. I like that. Yeah.
Right. Sounds like a delicious coffee from somewhere.
It's city in Italy, but yeah. Fashion one.
Exactly. So these are very, very high performance physical hosts that we're getting, high performance computing. And what application would you see typically these being deployed with for some maybe different uses you've seen clients utilize these kind of big
this is for the high processing one or high performance one. So for example, doing the rendering of the genome, for example, that you need to do a lot of mathematic calculations, calculating the weather, for example, and all of those type of. So another thing that you can use on this is Bitcoins, right? Mining.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly. Mining, it's just processing, right? Either by GPU or by the processor. It really depends on the application. This is just an enablement that Azure gives you, right? For those type of workloads. Not everyone is going to deploy some application on HPC, because they need to be designed, they need to be developed to take advantage of those type of computing. Because the normal Tetris ones, it doesn't work on this, as you can imagine. So and they are quite costly, because this is really a high-end one. But yeah, so these virtual machines are now upgraded. So yes, so it's going to be available, although it's not available on all. It's GA, but not available on all regions. That's a part that I think it's good, because it's more physical, right? This is require physical hardware to support these VMs. So it's going to be on Azure East US, South Central US, and the West European regions, okay, that will occur these Milan X processors, okay, and that's going to be upgraded, and that's the part that we want to bring it, because it's those type of things that we are not working with them all the time, but it's something that correlates to hardware that we both love, and especially me and you, Andrew, as well, that I know that coming from data center, this is what we've been working for several years, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I really do enjoy it. The one kind of application I've seen this type of high performance compute used for is video rendering, kind of in my past. So
although video rendering, you
it's
need
really interesting.
more GPU than CPU.
Yes, but it used to be that we
Yes.
didn't have those
Correct.
strong GPUs, we'll say a couple of years ago. And
Yes.
we had to utilize the kind of the primary
Yeah.
cores on the servers to do
Absolutely.
that rendering. So you'd end up with these big stacks of servers, and they would generate so much heat. You could literally stand behind them. I would go to the data center in shorts and a t-shirt, and you could stand there and do the work no problem if you were on the hot side. It was pretty easy to stay toasty in there, but when you went over to the cold side, you had to get out the proper sweater, because it's fascinating how hard those cores really work and how much heat they generate as part of the processing.
Absolutely.
Fascinating stuff.
Fascinating is as well the next one. Okay. So in development, this is the part that we like. In develop a new planned data center region in Finland Central. So Microsoft establishing another Azure region. In this case, offering for the Finnish organizations a local data residency and faster access to the cloud. So this is pretty cool. The first thing I'm thinking is a good friend of mine, my good friend MVP, that is there, is from there, and is one of the is always the top tier speakers at Ignite. So I think it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be ecstatic with these news. But yeah, if you are if absolutely,
it's really cool, right?
it's another region, right? So allows you to have more data centers, and we didn't stop growing the another region, correct?
Oh, exactly. And, Finland has really been putting a lot of development into sustainable technology, right? And as we know, all new data centers built by Microsoft since a couple of years now are all, what do we say, net zero,
This
carbon
one, I
zero,
think, is going to be the first one
environmentally friendly,
that is
right?
going to be on open side, right? Because they don't have a problem with cold.
Yeah. Right? I think they're going to
Yeah,
have windows.
it's going to be the first one that you can walk by and see inside, because they will be open, kind of way. I think it's only cover because of the snow, because it is not going to be a problem. Let's call it this way.
Well, you put the hot aisle directs up to the roof, melts the snow off in
Yeah,
the winter, collect that for, clean water, reuse that somewhere, and then of course in the summertime, there's probably no
exactly.
summertime, right? It's just snow. It's like Canada.
I think they are a
I
little
think we have
bit.
the same jokes there
Think
as we do here. They're a bit more northern
exactly.
than where we're
So
at,
I think
though, right?
they have kind of spring.
They get about two months of summer, as I understand it. That's
It
just
is
beautiful weather. And other than that, it's a lot like where we
absolutely.
live.
So yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah. So
there we go. All of our Finnish viewers and listeners are going to be frantically weighing in
absolutely.
for us now, correcting our ridiculous weather predictions here.
Yes, that's okay.
We make fun of Finnish weather with very
Absolutely.
good spirit,
We live in
because
Canada,
we also
so
make fun of our
we live
own
in
here in
Canada, so
Canada.
our winter it's like 6-7 months. So
At the base of the Rocky Mountain range, no less. So we get the crazy mountain weather. One day it's quite warm, the next
yeah,
day there's snow, and
it
it
happened that
happens that
fast.
fast. It really
So
does.
Sammy, if you are listening, uh, um, be happy. Cloud is coming on your way. In this case, Azure is coming on your way. Okay. Moving to the next one is the transition to the using connection strings for data injection by 31st of March 2025. So we still have 3 years to do that. So on March 31st, 2025, the technical support for instrumentation key-based global injection in application insights features will end. Wow, what a mouthful uh, statement. But yeah,
It's It's a big one, right? But it's part of application insights, which is related, very kind of joined together with Azure Monitor, of course, and just changing the way that data
Exactly.
comes in. So if you have an older application that you'd connected using this method, it simply needs to be upgraded to the modern method. So again, we're talking, welcome to the
Exactly.
new Azure. It's been here for a while. It's stable. It's pretty great. Come on over. So that's really just kind of part of our overall theme in this case, right? So we're talking about that authenticated telemetry ingestion. The regional data residency is going to be kind of with additional capabilities that are added in the
Yeah.
modernization, I should say, right? So the regional data residency, which is really important. So we just kind of talked about that in particular with the new region in
Yeah.
Finland coming in. It's important. A lot of countries have very strict data requirements, and monitoring is part of that. So if we have any kind of headers, applications, and things like that, they can contain a username or a person's first name, perhaps as a greeting. That is
Yeah.
personal information. So we have to make
And
sure we treat
especially
it
in
properly.
Europe that you have the GDPR, right?
It's
Yeah.
quite
Yeah.
particular.
So it's quite
Absolutely.
challenging to have that. And the things that we've been talking, and we talk a lot on the last podcast, that is the endpoint customization for internet and hybrid environments. So meaning that all your private links, because you have to remember application insight is where you can gain way more information about your application. Okay, and now transition that to through the cloud. It's not good, and be able to transitioning to the connection string. You have a connect string. You have a direct link between your application and application insights, so you can see inside of that because application insight is really powerful. You can see synthetic transactions. You can see a lot of those type
Yes.
of things that allows you to see the performance or where is the bottleneck of your application performance regarding what's going on. So be able to attach that through the internet, in this case, to your private link, for example, or to your hybrid environment, is pretty powerful. Um, and
Absolutely.
don't forget that you need to switch these before the end of March in 3 years. So you still have time. Although again, it's another exercise that needs to be planning, and you have to remember, depending on how you're going to plan this and the migration, your old data for consuming and all of that, um, it might not be there if depending on how you migrating those type of things, right? So you need to just update those.
Exactly. Yeah, it has to be considered as part of your migration process if you need to export, so that you can import into the new storage account, for
Absolutely.
example. Yeah, there's lots to
Lots to
consider as part of
consider.
those upgrades.
The next one is the general availability of inbound NAT rules now support port management for backend pulls. So again, another network one, another GA, another announcement that is being GA. Now we're talking about the inbound net rule. So, or NAT rule, not the net rule, NAT rule.
I got you.
Absolutely.
I, yeah. So I think this is part of kind of a long series of upgrades that have been happening around
Yeah.
load balancing and application gateways. We've seen quite a lot of really solid security improvements and feature enhancements over the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. There's been quite a few that have come through. Now, for this one, this is really great because when we used to enable port forwarding, we also had to have that NAT rule. It needed to be created for each instance in a load balancer's backend pool, right? So there's lots of challenges with that. And anytime we're duplicating work, we're creating, of course, opportunity for first human error, but also opportunity for failure because now we have multiple sets of things running in different ways. the hierarchy and prioritization of the rule sets really can impact what we actually see in the logs, for example. So now we can, through the port management for the backend pool, we can now specify the range of front-end ports and pre-allocate those for specific backend pool to enable that port forwarding. So now we do it by the range instead of 1401, 1402, 1403. We would have 3 rules. Now we just do the range and we're good to go. So much more efficient, much more kind of in the style of a firewall, let's say, that we're allowed to use a range of ports. So it's really enhancing the feature for being able to redirect that port and handle that traffic. So I think the one thing that I did read in here is you have to use the standard
Yes.
load balancer SKU to do this, right? So you can't use the lower SKU. You have to use the standard SKU.
You have to do that, and exactly that. This has been this capability. It's going on the backend for virtual machine scale sets, IP ranges in all the Azure regions, and like you said, it's pretty powerful. This part to have a little bit more about those NAT rules, right? And and
Yeah, and I
continuing.
apologize because I kind of stole that one and I just got excited and
That's
kept
okay.
talking. So I'm sorry.
That's okay, no
Marcos.
worries. And talking about the next one, going on the same segment, kind of talking about networking, is the review of the VNET configurations that might be affected by the IP address ranges. So this is another adjustment that they are doing. Although it affects the API management, that is a tool that we don't speak much on this podcast, but it's something that we want to mention because I think it's worthwhile. So on March next year, so in 1 year, they are changing the IP address. They are coming, especially the IP address changes that they are going for the VNet configuration, especially for the API management, right? So they have a list over there of Canada, Brazil, Canada Central, Brazil South, Germany, West Central, South Africa North, Korea Central, Central India, and South Central US, that they are changing the range of IPs, okay, that the IP management is coming from. Because this is important because you need to update those in order to do that, right? So network security groups and all of those type of things regarding the VNet, they need to be updated, okay?
Absolutely. Anywhere where there's the IP address reference for the API management, definitely NSGs. But if you're using Zero Trust, and of course we're all using Zero Trust, so you don't catch my cold, then
Absolutely.
I had to. Then we need to update our Azure firewall rules. So in that case, it's fairly straightforward. You can add the 2 addresses for now. When it transitions, we'll let you know again, and they'll announce the retirement of the old IP addresses once we have everything updated, right? So,
okay.
Hopefully you can hear me. It would sound a little bit like Marcos's audio might have dropped a little bit here.
No, it's my
Oh, there we go.
It's my phones that they are low battery. I was trying to see if I can work with them while they are charging, but apparently they can't. That's okay. Let's move on. Whatever it is, all good. All good. That. So talking about a new thing that this is probably going to be a surprise, but the templates functionality preview version in Azure Portal will be retired in 3 years. So this is one of the public preview templates functionality on Azure will be retired. So again, this is one of the things that we always talking about the public previews is they have a time frame that they will be available. So these templates it's good when you have, for example, a VM that you want to use it and you want to work in, and usually it's where I start, right, to just show what automation can do and what you can do regarding this. So, and it's a
Exactly.
nice functionality. You can now, to avoid losing access to the templates, you can follow the steps that there is on a blog post to basically convert them into the templates that you want to do it, okay, to what's called the template specs uh, that you want to do it.
Exactly.
So you can convert with PowerShell script, you can convert manually converting to the portal, whatever you want to do it, but you can convert that so you don't lose them. You still have 3 years, but yes, you need to do that before the end of the month of 2025.
Exactly. And this one is a little interesting because, like you say, this is what we kind of have our famous warning about, right? Because this is when we use something in preview, but then that feature is not going to track
Yeah,
directly to production. So they have to retire it, or you have to figure out a way to migrate it or do something to transform it to the new way of doing it. So in this case, it changes from the template preview to template specs, and we can transform it using lots of different ways, which is great. Microsoft provided that
absolutely.
for us already. But this is that
Absolutely,
caution,
and
right?
and it's pretty cool because in even our experience, you were not very familiar with that. I did use that quite a
That's
bit,
right.
and just to give an interesting point of view, even to you that you are listening on view, and depending on where you're coming from, um, um, it's just a matter of using the functionalities. They are there for you to use. It's up to us to use it, and now you have to experience on how you can do that, and that is pretty cool. Exactly the same as the next update, right? That is going to be very cool. So and I will give you the grant of doing that.
I just want to tell you, I don't know if it changed in the recording, but your audio just changed to the richest, deepest radio voice I've ever heard come from you. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that
It's
say it again.
amazing. It's amazing. Your audio was absolutely gorgeous. It just changed to this beautiful radio voice. So I don't know if that comes through in the recording on the other side, but it's absolutely fascinating. I know your headphones are really fighting you there. So let's talk about operator assistance in Azure MFA. This one was kind of funny for us as well when we did our kind of quick run through to pick what we chat about. I actually thought this was already retired. So I stopped talking about this one a couple years ago to my customer, but operator assistance in Azure MFA will actually be retired at the end of September in 2023. So just next year. So 1 year left. So if you are dependent on this feature within your tenant, it is time to take a look at the steps in this article. There is action required to avoid service disruption in this case. So, right now, when an MFA phone call is initiated and an operator answers, the operator is asked to transfer the phone call to an extension belonging to the end user to perform the MFA action that call requests. This functionality will go away. So if you have only a main number that is used for an employee's office number, and the operator at the front desk, for example, answers and says, "Hello, this is Bob's Widget Company. How may I direct your call?" The automated operator comes up and says, "Please transfer this call to Marcos Nogueira," and that will cease operation. That's going to change. And there's some steps that people can follow to disable that functionality. And then you're going to have to do probably some Active Directory domain services updates to people's office number for a direct line in that case.
Absolutely. And that was one of the things that we were talking about even before we start recording this podcast is like, I thought that was already, um, it was already there, right?
I thought it
Exactly.
disappeared years
ago. But apparently they are saying that this is going to disappear next year, right? In September, end of September 2023 is going to be retired. So apparently you still have the operator. And every time that I hear this, funny or not, I remember Matrix operator, kind of the operating assistance.
Exactly.
I need to get out
Plug
of
me
this
in.
world.
Right. Some days.
Absolutely.
It's either too much or not enough coffee. I can't decide
That's
which
okay.
today.
We've been challenging with a lot of audio problems on this podcast, but as usually, we press the record button and we don't do anything else besides stop.
We just run with it.
Absolutely.
You know what? There's been no head shrinking lately, so I haven't made all of the tech gods too angry. I just picture like my little head with a ponytail. You know those little, in the movies they always have like the angry voodoo guy, and it's like, oh,
Yeah,
I just worry I
absolutely.
made somebody
But that's
upset
okay.
or
It's
something.
my
right?
fault. I did not charge my headset, so it's no one else.
But that's
It's no
okay.
one else.
You know what? I don't know what we hear different audio when we talk versus what's recorded for our podcast, right?
Exactly.
So sometimes it's a bit challenging, sometimes it's interesting. My concern, just so everybody understands kind of what we go through a little bit, is we give ourselves the lowest quality mics that we talk on. And we give really lovely mics that we try to record for with the podcast. When your audio changed to the beautiful radio voice, I was worried that the mic with the tinny sound got reassigned so that all of our wonderful viewers and listeners heard it. I was
No,
really
it's the
worried
other way
about it.
around. So the voice that you hear is the voice of the mic, and that you hear now of my mic, and the voice that you used to hear is the voice of the headsets, because I have both.
Yes, yeah.
I have both for different. But yeah, technicalities that we are okay with that.
The things we do to look beautiful on the podcast, right?
Absolutely.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely.
I spend hours on this hair, folks. Hours.
No worries. No worries at all. But with that,
It's the curler that gives me
with
the
that,
most
we're
trouble.
coming to the end of the podcast. Unfortunately, it's already that time, and I have to thank you once again, Andrew, for being part of one more episode of this podcast. But I have to thank you as well, our listeners, and to just one more time to just ask you to just support us. The best way to support us is, please don't
Absolutely.
send money. We don't want money. We want your support, your love.
Well, now hold on here. You open an interesting topic here. No, we can't actually accept any money for this. We do this because we love each and every one of you. We just want to share and be part of the community. Please do though, subscribe. And if you would like to give back, let us know. Join into the comments, ask questions, answer questions. There's tons of people on the YouTube channel that are always kind of having these chats about the different topics, which is fantastic. But yes, thank you so much, and I appreciate being here. It's a lot of fun for me as well.
You're very welcome, my friend. You're very welcome. It's always a pleasure to have you here on the show. So with that, it's time to say goodbye. So thank you, and I hope I can see you next week. Bye for now.